To see so many of you here to talk about volunteers. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hutchins. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Association of Nonprofits, and welcome to MANP Connects. We've been doing this since the pandemic and the lockdown. I think our first one was in April 2020, and we had so much fun meeting so many of you from all over this great state that we just couldn't stop. So today we're bringing a topic that you helped us identify as a top issue that many of you are concerned with, which is volunteer management. And so we are going to be, we've invited Kelsey from the she partnered with the Data Innovation Project at USM. She's from Volunteer Maine. She's going to come on camera in just a minute to talk about the study that Volunteer Maine did to find out how volunteers were being impacted by the pandemic. And she's going to be talking about her work as we try to figure out how to get our volunteers back and retain them. The other thing I want to mention is a really great report that came out from the independent sector. They keep track of the value of volunteer time. And this right now, if you go to their site, and this is one of those cases where Kelly will pop in that link in chat as soon as she gets chance, but you can go to their website and you find out that right now, as of April 2022, the value of volunteer time is $29.95 an hour. And then they break it down by state, and you can have access to that data. Right now in Maine, it's $26.77. Now you might say to yourself, okay, so what? Just a reminder, everybody, that this type of information that Kelsey's going to be talking about, that was done by the Data Innovation Project at USM, or the work that independent sector does. That kind of information is so useful when you're applying for grants and talking to donors about and funders about how much you rely on volunteers, and that value is significant. And we need, as a sector, to be really claiming that as a value that we leverage in the nonprofit sector like nobody else. The Maine Association of Nonprofits, we have our Adding Up Impact report that comes out every other year, and we update data about the sector. And one of the things that we include in that report is the value of volunteer time. And in Maine, we have calculated in years past that it can be the value of volunteer time in Maine alone can be upwards of $1 billion with a B. And so I just encourage you to start thinking about how you might want to incorporate those points as you are advocating for your work and your worth and your value to our communities. It's significant. So, all right, that's the setup here. A quick shout out to our sponsors, because they are the ones who understand the value of us connecting, and they're making it possible for MANP to do this and continue doing it in 2022. Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Maine Biz, and Northeast Delta Dental, really great partners of ours. A couple of them are nonprofits themselves, and they really understand the value of the work we're doing. So thank you guys. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to invite Kelsey to the camera. Kelsey Preecs is the program coordinator at Volunteer Maine, and she was specifically hired by Volunteer Maine because they recognized that through challenging times like this, what the heck? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? So, Kelsey, I know we're asking you to cram a ton of information into just 5 minutes because we have lots of guest speakers today. But sort of, what's the biggest change or challenge, and what can nonprofits do about it?
Sure. So I think when we look at the data that we got, it wasn't exactly shocking, right? Like, people couldn't come in, so there weren't as many events for volunteers. A lot more people figured out how to do remote volunteer opportunities. And what I think we're seeing now, and granted, this is a little bit more anecdotal because I don't have the data for this, but what we're hearing now is that volunteers are not returning as much as they had in the past. And some of that is because of our older volunteers. They're not returning. And then younger volunteers are having a hard time finding opportunities that work for them. And part of that, I think, is probably like a school schedule issue. It was so unpredictable, I think, over this last year of like when kids would be in school, when they wouldn't. They had to be extra cautious about being out in public. And then our older adults, they were the most at risk at the beginning, and maybe they don't feel comfortable now. I think we can see through like our very exciting housing situation here that, our houses are going up for sale and selling for so much more. It means people are leaving or moving. And then we have people who maybe are coming from different parts of the country and they're not as connected into those communities as these former people were. So, I think people are still volunteering. Volunteerism has never gone away. It's never shut down completely. But we're still trying to build up to what it was before. Maine has always been like in at least the top 10, if not the top 5 for like youth volunteerism. And it has almost imploded in on itself. It's not the same as it used to be. And that's not to say that there aren't youth who are doing a lot of volunteerism, but maybe it's not being recorded. Maybe it's not that formal volunteerism. We have a lot of instances of like neighbor to neighbor type of help where people in the community know that one of their community members needs help. And so people do what they can, whether that's make them meals, help with their yard work, whatever. But that formal volunteerism has tanked slightly. I say tanked, that maybe that's a big word for that, but it's gone down a little bit. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that about youth volunteerism in Maine.
Mhm.
Is that organized youth volunteerism, do you think? Is it working with youth groups and schools?
Yes. So there has been a time in Maine's educational history where you had to have hours of community service to volunteerism to graduate. Some schools still do that. Some schools don't. And in general, the Department of Education encourages volunteerism, but they recognize that it's hard to track. That's a whole nother system to deal with. And so they're not like requiring that of all schools. So yeah, I think there's some of that is that school-based volunteerism isn't as prominent as it was before. But I think too, organizations have to figure out how to engage youth in a way that's meaningful for them, for both parties, for youth and for the organizations. And especially when you think about some of the barriers that we have, not just with youth, but everybody, like transportation's a big one. Timing is another big one. If you're a high school student and you go to school all day and then maybe you play a sport after school, you're really not available until 4 or 5 in the evening, and people are going home at that point. So, there's a lot of reasons why youth volunteerism has started to decline, I think.
One thing I will mention, and I have 2 young people, so and well, who knows if I know anything about young people these days. I think I'm an expert, but no. And they'd be the first to say, "Mom, you're such a dork. You don't know anything about us." But anyway, it does seem to me that there is a community commitment that does seem to be coming from, which is great to hear, even though in some cases we might think that civic institutions are not trapping young people. There still seems to be that commitment. But can you talk a little more about what you're recommending to nonprofits to reevaluate with regards to their volunteer engagement?
Sure. I would say there's a few ways around like recruitment. We in Maine have had a long history of word of mouth type promotion. Communities tend to be really tight knit. People know each other. But as I mentioned, we're having a lot of a shift. People from out of state are moving in, maybe a lot more than in our history. And so it's important to really like have your information out there about what you do, what you need, those sorts of things out there where somebody who's maybe not a part of the community can get on it and Google and find it. And I would also say that one of the data points that came out of our survey was that the biggest concern that most volunteers have is that safety aspect. And while I think we are getting into a point of time where COVID isn't as worrisome. There's a vaccine now, we're starting to find treatments. People are still worried about it. Like I have a 3-year-old, she can't get vaccinated. So I still have to be pretty careful about where I'm going when we're wearing masks, that sort of thing. So recognizing that while maybe your nuclear setting, you feel very comfortable, there might be instances where people I can't feel comfortable quite yet. And so how can you still make sure that you're keeping those people safe? And maybe that is asking people to continue to wear masks, or figuring out how to keep your volunteers separated or spread out. Keep in mind that safety aspect, I think, is another really important thing. And in general, engaging people in ways that can maybe work with their schedules a little bit more. I think we've gotten really used to just being like, this is an online meeting and I can just pop on and I don't even have to worry about gas or the travel time. So if you can think of opportunities where people can do them at home, or maybe take them and do them with the group, with their nuclear setting that they feel comfortable with, whether that's their family or a church group or a neighborhood, whatever, maybe there's something they can do in their nuclear setting and then bring back to you, or do work for you from home, whether that's, promoting a fundraiser or getting your message out, whatever. Just thinking about that safety aspect and, different levels of comfort with that. There's going to be people who still want to come in. Like there's people who volunteer because they love the social aspect of it, and they're going to come in and they'll figure out how to keep themselves safe or what level of comfort they have. But there's also going to be people who love your mission, who are nervous about that aspect still. So just thinking about that maybe we're not like 100% in the clear yet, and recognizing that for people.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kelsey.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how people can use Volunteer Maine as a resource moving forward.
Yeah, so I got lots of stuff for you.
Okay.
I run the Maine Volunteer Managers Network. We meet monthly, and we have a ton of different topics that come through. Last week, we talked about engaging older adults. We've had a panel about engaging youth. We've done risk management, rural community volunteer management. So there's a sign up on our website for that. You can put in your information and you'll get a monthly email from me saying, don't forget, here we are. We have the conference, the Maine Volunteer Leadership Conference in the fall. That's in October. I'm looking for speakers right now. So if that's something that anyone here is interested in talking about, looking for speakers. And if you do a session for us, you get the access to the rest of the conference for free. But that's going to be a great conference this year. I'm really excited about. We're doing it in person, which we haven't done in 2 years.
Wow.
So that's exciting.
How exciting.
Yeah. And then Faiza Vinzant is going to be our keynote, and she's the executive director for the certification and volunteer administration group. And she's got a lot of really great things. She's going to do a few sessions for us, actually. So I'm really excited about that. We also have an online course that's self-paced over a 6-week period, and it's a novice level. It's kind of the beginning, but I think it's a really great course, especially if you are somewhat new to volunteerism or volunteer management, or even if you're not that new, it really gives you the opportunity to look at your volunteer program and do some exercises with it and see areas of improvement or areas that you need to focus on. And I'm actually working on that right now to just do some updates, but I plan to launch that within the next few weeks, again, for another probably what I'd call a summer session. So, and then in general, I will just say, like, my job is to promote and help volunteerism in this state. So if you ever have questions about trying to find resources, or you just want to like throw an idea by me, please email me. I'm here. It's fine. It's my job,
Okay,
even if it's
great.
like very specific to you.
That's great. Well, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here today. And we'll look forward to touching base. I'm going to start moving on to getting some of our other people. Thanks, Kelsey. That was so helpful.
Thank you.
Gwendolyn Hudson, Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters in Mid-Maine. Where are you? Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
One of our recent alumni of Leadership Institute for Executive Directors. I'm so happy you came. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was a fabulous experience, and we're still in touch. So it's great to be here today too.
Great. So you know what the topic is today, and obviously Big Brothers Big Sisters relies very heavily on volunteers. Would you be willing to share with us sort of what have you seen to be sort of the biggest change, and then maybe sort of the one bright spot, innovation, aha moment, sort of your reflections on this topic?
Absolutely. So for those who are not aware, we create and support one-to-one youth mentoring matches that ignite the power and promise of youth. And we serve 7 counties in the state of Maine. So we're Knox, Lincoln, Waldo, Penobscot, Somerset, Kennebec, and Androscoggin counties. And throughout those 7 counties, and we've kind of broken them down into 4 regions, we serve and partner with over 33 schools and agencies where we work with youth volunteers to support our youth matches. So in a given year, we'll support anywhere from 300 to 700 youth. Over the last 10 years, it's been anywhere in those numbers. Last year was one of our lowest in the last 10 years. I would say we served about 391 youth. We were just shy of 400 youth served. And this year, we're hoping to serve 525 youth. And one of the major causes for that is working with the schools and certainly being very respectful and cognizant of the school rules and of knowing what the kids need in each of their situations. So I would say the most important thing that we've found is, just like everyone else for the last 2 years, we've had to adapt. So when our kids weren't in school, we were offering one-to-one mentoring virtually, and that became a way to pass the time for them and to stay connected, but it was not a way to create matches. We were finding it was very difficult for the youth in our programs and our volunteers to either find the time with what they were doing and to then commit to that and create a relationship that was so based on proximity and being in person and doing activities. So that has been a real challenge for us, obviously, is maintaining the volunteers and keeping everyone safe and healthy. And at the same time, finding new volunteers continues to be a struggle, just as Kelsey mentioned. And it was a beautiful segue talking about children and youth volunteers. It's something that we have quite a bit of experience with. I was speaking with one of our program managers earlier this week, and I asked her if she had any advice or any thoughts she wanted to share with me before I came to speak with you all today. And she said that what she was finding was the people that were inquiring or getting to the start of the process, the adults or the school-based bigs, the high school and college students, even if they were starting the process with us, something would inevitably come up, and we would have a much higher rate of not being able to follow through on the process because of whatever else was going on. And that could be so many different reasons. The other piece of it that maybe we're not thinking about, and maybe that will be part of today as well, but I wanted to mention because it came up in my board meeting yesterday, was that we're having a harder time recruiting our community and board members as well. So it just seems like a whole level of volunteerism for our agency has been a bit more of a struggle. But as always, the highlight for us is the volunteers we do have and the incredible staff who keep them informed and supported and awake to what is going on with our kids, because these kids everywhere throughout the country are in need of more support than ever. And it is vital that we are there to support all of our populations that are in need, and especially the volunteers that are volunteering right now, currently in this state in whatever way they can. We keep hearing from them, and especially, our experiences with our bigs. They keep saying to us, I'm getting more out of this in the middle of the pandemic than I think I'm giving back to them. This is such a meaningful experience for me, and I wish everyone would do it and realize it doesn't take as much time as you think. So there's always a bright spot. There's always hope. And it does feel very nice going into May, thinking that we might be bridging the gap at this point and coming out of it somewhat.
Yeah, thank you, Gwendolyn. That's really helpful. And just to speak to that, Lisa in chat had wanted us to share that her president and CEO Tom is a mentor in the New Hampshire, and that just goes to show, like, there is definitely the Big Brothers and Big Sisters has done a really good job over the years of branding, if you will. And that sounds a little doesn't sound significant enough, but it just reminds me that one, the leaning into what motivates a volunteer to be part of your organization, and that it's that there's social connection, there's pride in knowing that you're giving back to, as you said, we know how much young people right now are really suffering socially and mentally through this pandemic, and it's starting to have real physical impacts on them as well. So just kudos to you and all the work you're doing. And really quickly, so you are looking for volunteers, and should people reach out if they're in particular areas? Do you have a particularly acute need right now that you want to share?
Thank you for asking. Absolutely. So we have 100 littles waiting to be matched with a big in our community-based program right now. And in Penobscot County, we just made 2 community-based matches, both female. And so all of our waiting littles in Penobscot County are male. So we are in desperate need of big brothers in Penobscot County. We will take bigs in any county. We will take anyone with oh my goodness, with any sort of specialty as a community member. We are looking forward. If you are interested in working with kids, we will find the right place for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Gwendolyn. Thanks
Thank
for coming.
you.
It was great to see you.
You too.
Okay. Next up, I have Casey Faulkingham. She's the Director of Development and Engagement for Partners for Peace. Hi, Casey.
Hi.
How are you doing? And tell me what town you're calling in from today.
I'm in Hamden, Maine.
Yeah, right. So close to Bangor.
Yes.
Yeah,
Primarily
okay.
work in Bangor. I'm working from home some days in the office.
Great. And you guys, your services supporting people who have been impacted by domestic abuse, and it's in Penobscot and Piscataquis counties. So some of the same areas that Gwendolyn was just talking about. Thank you for coming this morning. You want to share with us what maybe a primary challenge or change that you've seen, and then a bright spot for you in terms of managing volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we're a domestic violence resource center. We serve Penobscot and Piscataquis counties. So the volunteer work that we do can be emotionally taxing. I mean, the work that we do is quite emotionally taxing, given that we primarily serve people who are being affected by domestic violence, by sex trafficking, by trauma. And a lot of the people who come to our workforce and to our volunteer workforce are survivors of trauma themselves, or are also a part of gender minorities as well. And we know that the pandemic has disproportionately impacted people who, these very demographics, gender minorities. And we also know that gender minorities, especially, women and trans folks, were really impacted by things like lack of childcare infrastructure. And so we're seeing these issues in our workforce and in our volunteer workforce, because as women, we do a lot of unpaid care work already in the world. And so, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Camera does that sometimes, just shuts off.
That's okay.
And so it's really challenging right now, because people are, and during the pandemic, people are needing to take care of their families. So we also saw a lot of volunteers kind of step away because they needed to care for their families. And the same thing in our workforce. We've had lots and lots of challenges there. And one big challenge is that we have a volunteer coordinator position that's been vacant for about a year. And so that's obviously very significantly challenging, because it's important to have, as an organization, to invest our dollars into positions that support our volunteers.
Right, to really keep that engagement, right?
Yeah, so that's been challenging, but I am happy to report that we have a full-time volunteer coordinator starting next Wednesday.
Yay! Collective sigh of relief. MANP can relate to that feeling.
I think we all can.
Yeah.
I really think that we all can.
And
that's definitely a bright spot. And I think bright spots are very, very hard to come by, perhaps in this like political climate, and everything going on in the world is really challenging. But we are seeing a lot of people come to us, or people inquire about volunteer opportunities as a result of the things that are going on in the world that are angering them and driving them towards wanting to take action and wanting to give back to their community. And connect with their community too. I think that there are a few things that are really key to cultivating a really great volunteer force at our nonprofits. And one of them is connection. People who are coming to us, I think they really are looking for connection in some way. They're looking for community. They're looking for a way to feel good about what they're doing and what they're contributing to in their community. And so just a couple of tricks that we've found useful and that has resulted in more volunteers coming on board. We've been working with our corporate partners, so folks in the business sector who are giving us dollars, but we're working with them and saying like, might you have employees who are looking to volunteer? And a lot of businesses have allow their employees to volunteer on company time for a certain amount. And so we've been connecting more meaningfully with our corporate partners and talking to them about, might you highlight our volunteer opportunities for your employees? And we have seen quite a few people come and want to volunteer, but the ways in which people want to volunteer are different from what they used to be. We used to get a lot of people who wanted to volunteer on the helpline, who wanted to volunteer by facilitating support groups. We're not experiencing that so much. We're experiencing a shortage of helpline volunteers and groups coordinators and people who want to volunteer in a way where they're directly connecting with survivors. And that makes sense. The world's hard enough. Like there's a lot going on. Maybe that's too much and just too intense. And so really connecting with the volunteer and asking them how they would like to give it their time, what's meaningful to them. And we're finding a lot of folks want to join committees, they want to organize donations, they want to help distribute the donations. And that is challenging as well, because some of those things, have to happen in person. And our region right now has quite the outbreak. And so we are, we're all masking and we're back to masking and distancing. And it is a huge bummer, but that's where we're at.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Casey, sorry, I've got a Kelsey and a Casey today. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm assuming that if people want to learn more about your program and find out if there's opportunities for volunteers, they should reach out.
I'll drop some contact information in the
Excellent.
chat. Thank you
so much. Okay. Next up is another Leadership Institute alum, our friend Jenn McAdoo from Executive Director of Furniture Friends. Jenn, are you out there somewhere? Hi. How are you, my friend? Good. So what's going on with Furniture Friends? One thing I do want to mention is that we know that you actually are the executive director now, but about 9 years ago, you started as volunteer yourself, right?
That is actually quite true. So I was a volunteer when I first came to Furniture Friends, and then I became the volunteer coordinator and have been the ED for about 6 years now. So yeah, volunteerism is near and dear to my heart and is also a big part of the work that we do at Furniture Friends. For folks who aren't familiar with us, we're a furniture bank. We collect donated furniture from the community and distribute it to people in need throughout the greater Portland area. And over the years, we've had between 3 and 5 staff. But in 10 years of existence, we've served over 10,000 people, getting them the necessary household furniture that they need. And we absolutely could not do that without a huge core of volunteers to help us pick up and deliver furniture. So as you can imagine, COVID really decimated our volunteer program simply for basic health and safety reasons. And we work with a lot of vulnerable populations, a lot of people who have been homeless and are moving into housing, immigrants who might not have the same vaccinations that many of us have, people who are elderly or disabled. So we had to do what we had to do to protect the health and safety of our clients, as well as our volunteers and our staff. So we had to make some operational changes right after COVID embedded in our community. And that really was a game changer for us. We used to go into people's homes, donors and clients, to pick up furniture from your living room or deliver it to somebody else's apartment. And the big change that we made was doing things curbside. So now you have to get your couch out to the porch for us to pick it up. And we deliver things to clients right to the door of their apartments, but they need to have the help to get it into their building. And that's really tricky for some people. So it's an ongoing concern of ours, how we can resume normal activity. But some changes that we've made, we've never stopped masking in our warehouse, and we've required our volunteers to be vaccinated. So even though we've had interest in some of our regular volunteers coming back, we also work with vulnerable groups, a lot of youth programs where youth are at risk, and some of them might not be vaccinated. So we're putting in requirements that are limiting our pool of volunteers to some extent. And then on the other hand, like other people were saying, it increases the safety protocols so that people feel comfortable coming back. And I will say that, people have mentioned the challenges with youth volunteering, but I really think that people are just trying right now to figure out how to live their lives, go to school and go to work as this pandemic continues. So I'm not surprised that volunteering isn't top of mind for people. But we just had a corporate group join us earlier in the week, and it proved a theory that's been rolling around in the back of my mind. We had 10 volunteers from the same company. Most of them are working remotely at least half of their week. And of those 10 people, several were in the same department and didn't know each other. So I think the creative opportunity there is that the team building that we know exists when people come together to lend their energy and enthusiasm for community service, that's always there, but that is a highlight of moving beyond COVID, to have these opportunities to reconnect in our workplaces, in our school environments, and continuing to do that good work and necessary work that so many of our organizations need.
Yeah, I thank you so much, Jen. That's definitely what I've been thinking is that we are all starved for social engagement, and there's no one in our community that hasn't been impacted by that in some way, shape, or form. And just the paradox that you have of like the primary concern of volunteers is safety, but the safety protocols in some cases are actually keeping volunteers away. So all kinds of paradoxes in terms of that. And I'm so glad to hear you say that for you, that's the bright spot, right? At a crisis, that's the adrenaline for innovation. And we absolutely, we can't afford in the nonprofit sector to not see crisis as the adrenaline for innovation. We have to embrace that. And we have to be really proud of the fact that our sector provides people the opportunity to feel like they have a purpose in their society. And so it's hard work. It's going to take a lot of time and energy for us to shift our focus that way, but the opportunity is absolutely there. So thank you for highlighting that. And thank you for coming this morning.
Sure.
It's good to
thanks
see
for
you.
having me. It's nice to
Yeah.
see you.
And we put in chat op-ed that Jenn wrote recently. Encourage you to check that out. I'm going to have my last person come on, Michael Coon from Volunteers of Northern New England. Mike, is it Mike or Michael?
I go either way.
Okay, well, good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Well, it's really great. It's a pleasure to meet you. I know your boss, right? Is it okay for me to say that, Rich, right?
That's
I
Rich.
know him and he and I have been in good touch in the past. And so it's great to meet you. So you know what we're talking about today. What are your
Yes.
reflections? What's on your mind, and maybe share a bright spot so that people feel like they're able to like charge forward and make some motion here.
So I actually oversee two organizations. I work for Volunteers of America, but I'm also the interim executive director for Equality Maine,
Yes, right.
Uh,
Thank you.
both which have large volunteer bases that we really had done well in both organizations prior to COVID. Our volunteers at Volunteers of America would come into our properties and work with our seniors and our group home residents on crafting and all sorts of entertainment options and very close contact. And when COVID hit, we had to shut that down completely. All of our properties went on lockdown. We would bring in volunteer groups from organizations to do cleanup days and just all sorts of events at the properties. So that pretty much came to a virtual standstill at Volunteers of America for the last 2 years. And I'm not really sure we're there yet with these little outbreaks coming up that we're going to go back anytime soon just for the resident safety. But there, what we struggle because people really do want to volunteer. There are people that really want to help. And so last year, we came up with a way for people to, at Christmas time, go out and purchase things off of a list. As opposed to just giving a donation, we had a wish list from all of our residents and we posted it and people could pick things and they went out and bought stuff and then delivered it to our offices so that we could deliver it to the people that asked for it. That was hugely successful in the fact that when I would be in the office and people would come in with their gifts, they were excited to give them and they had their children with them and it was a family event. We all went out and did this and bought this stuff for this person. So I think that was a big win that even post-COVID we're going to keep doing because people really had fun with it. With Equality Maine, there's another organization that uses a lot of volunteers because the volunteers in that group, really it's the only time that the people in the community can get together with others in their community. So most of the volunteers were event driven. So they would come and volunteer at one of our events. We stopped having events. We're starting to do that again. We're starting to see some tabling events happening. I was at a Maine Mariners game in March where we tabled and we had a whole group of young people who were so excited to table with us. And they're the smartest group. They're the ones that have no problem wearing the masks. They're all vaxxed. You know, they know what's right. So they've been right there. So we had some fun with that. A win there was we also at Equality Maine work with older adults. And a lot of, as far as older adults all across the state, most of them are isolated. But then imagine being part of the LGBTQ community, and then you're really isolated. So we developed a call system where people could volunteer to call the older adults and just do a check-in. And some of these people made really great connections and continue to call and have built some nice friendships. So we've found a way to kind of meet that.
And that was that was an adaptation that you made.
Yes.
Was provided. And those are, I'm sorry, just so I understand this. So those are younger volunteers calling the older ones?
Yes.
That's great. And so really, really enhancing that social connection of bringing people together under a common purpose and recognizing that we've become the isolation that's occurred because of the pandemic. So do you have any, this is your opportunity to invite people to volunteer for either organization. Do you have any acute needs at this point that you'd like to point out?
Well, like I said, we really haven't opened back up our properties to allow people in. So I'm hoping maybe by the late summer, we can start inviting people back to do maybe a day of gardening. That was always very popular at the senior housing. But we do have a need for volunteers at Equality Maine to help us with some upcoming events. I have some Pride events all through June, all throughout the
Pride
state.
Portland.
Oh my gosh, not only
That's
Pride,
like huge event here in Maine. I mean, in Portland, I'm located in Portland, and it's near my house. And
so, but all across the state, there are Pride events that we just can't get to. We're a small staff. That's why I'm the interim director. We're very, very small staff.
Small but mighty.
So until we staff back up, there are opportunities all through June to help us with tabling events at Pride events. And even in the small towns, it's amazing how busy June is going to be.
And let's remember that that's outside. So there's some,
it is outside.
Yeah, it is. It's all outside.
Yep.
So there is that plus. So, hey, thank you, Michael. It was really great to meet you. I'm so grateful for you coming on today. Hey, everybody, we're going to have to wrap up because we're always really good at stopping right at 9:45. I just wanted to really quickly, though, Nancy had asked a question back in the chat a little bit. I'm hoping somebody might have helped her maybe share a description, a volunteer management job description. I'm just pointing that out because I'm sure Kelsey, other people would be willing to help her out. But I just wanted to highlight that so that she gets the support that she needs. We are taking a break at MANP Connects in June. I'm going to be on the road in Washington, D.C. meeting with our national colleagues. Did you know we are part of a national network of 30,000 nonprofit organizations across this country? Yep. Yes, you are. So I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. But I wanted to tell you that in 2 weeks' time on June 3rd, we're partnering with a pilot project called the Cultural Alliance of Maine. And we're going to be having a convening. They are going to be, and we're just partnering with them on it in 2 weeks' time, just at the same time at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. And we're going to be talking about wages, nonprofit wages, and how can we start getting nonprofit wages to reflect the real value of our workforce. And so that might be a good opportunity for you. So that's it. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, great guys. Oh my gosh, Northeast Delta Dental and Maine Biz. These guys are all amazing folks that we work with. And but I most love these things because I get to connect with so many of you and the work you're doing. Hats off to you guys. You inspire me every day. Happy Friday. Have a great May weekend. And I will look forward to either seeing you on June 3rd at our partnership with Cultural Alliance of Maine or at another MANP Connects over the summer. Take care and we'll see you around. Bye.